So we're talking about the second coming, and I wanted to read a couple of things before we go through this. Jesus is going to come back at the Battle of Armageddon. So I didn't know whether to call it the Battle of Armageddon or the Second Coming. But anyway, we just wrapped those into one. But the nations will gather together at this place to fight against God. And here's why they will gather, because first of all, God said they would. And so that's going to happen through His sovereignty. But secondly, because of the deception of Satan, these three spirits will go out from the devil, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. These spirits will go out and begin to unite the world together against God. And then it's just frankly the hatred that the enemy has for God, and that mankind has for God. And I'm going to read that to you in Psalm 2, because it's amazing how much rebellion and hatred exists toward a good God. But in Psalm 2:1 it says, "Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed, saying, Let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. Then He shall speak to them in His wrath and distress them in His deep displeasure. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I'll give you the nations for your inheritance and the ends of the earth for your possession." So this psalm has a lot of elements about the sovereignty of God and Jesus Himself, the Son, and the hatred that the nations have for God and for His Son. And it says in verse 9, "You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel." And that's going to happen at the Battle of Armageddon. "Now therefore be wise, O kings, be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling." So that's just sort of a preview of what's going to happen at the Battle of Armageddon. And it's just amazing how much rebellion is going to exist in humanity at the end of the age, enough so that they would fight against God. So they'll assemble together through these different means, and they'll come together at the Valley of Megiddo in order to fight against God. And Malachi 3:2 says this, "Who can endure the day of His coming? Who can stand when He appears? For He is like a refiner's fire and like launderer's soap." So we'll go back to Revelation 19, and I'm going to read this from the Message Bible again, just to get you caught up to where we are, and then we'll see the fate of the beast and the false prophet. In verse 11, Revelation 19, verse 11, and let me go to the Message Bible because it's a little more colorful. "I saw the heavens open wide, and a white horse and its rider. The rider named Faithful and True, judges and makes war in pure righteousness. His eyes are a blaze of fire, and on his crown, or on his head, many crowns. He has a name inscribed that's known only to himself. He's dressed in a robe soaked with blood, and he is addressed as the Word of God. The armies of heaven, mounted on white horses and dressed in dazzling white linen, follow him. A sharp sword comes out of his mouth, so he can subdue nations, and then rule them with a rod of iron." So He's going to defeat these armies, and then He's going to take His place in Jerusalem on a throne on the earth. He treads the winepress of the raging wrath of God, the sovereign strong. On his robe and thigh is written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Then, and we're going to read this and then I'll go back to the New King James. "I saw an angel standing in the sun, shouting to all the flying birds in middle heaven, Come to the great supper of God, feast on the flesh of kings and captains and champions, horses and their riders. Eat your fill of them, free and slave, small and great." So this is a terrible day, but I really took a lot of time to lead you up to this moment in history, and that is simply this, that that mankind is just like rebellious and filled with hatred toward God. These people that form these armies have been through the dispensation of grace. Part of it, they've been through these times when God offered His mercy and grace and forgiveness and reconciliation. They've been through 7 years of the tribulation, which is an outpouring of the wrath and judgment of God. So mercy didn't reach them, judgment and fear didn't reach them, and now they've concluded they want to destroy God. They want to join together. They have so much pride that they think they can assemble with their weapons, their modern day weapons, and somehow they're going to defeat God. Well, what's God supposed to do with people that are that determined to live without Him? I mean, you know, He's given them so many chances and a free will to make a choice, and they've made their choice. And so at some point, the Lord just has to step in and say, enough's enough. We could go on another 1,000 years and you wouldn't change your mind. You have already made your decision. So this is verse 17, Revelation 19. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying, and this is the when he's calling the birds to eat the bodies of the slain. Then in verse 19, I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. So this is Jesus and the saints arrayed against the armies of the world. The beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and who worshipped his image. So their army is made up of people who received the mark willingly, and they worshipped the Antichrist, or they worshipped Satan. These two, the Antichrist and the false prophet, were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. And the rest were killed with the sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse. And all the birds were filled with their flesh. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. So this is different. These are the personalities of the tribulation. There is the devil and the Antichrist and the false prophet. Well, the false prophet and the Antichrist were cast into the lake of fire. That's the second death. There's no return from there. They're done. They've reached their eternal destiny. However, the devil himself was bound and put into confinement, into prison for 1,000 years. Now this 1,000-year period would be the millennium, and we're going to talk about what happens later, because he hasn't found his eternal home yet, which will end up being the lake of fire. But right now the devil is bound and put in prison for 1,000 years. Verse 3, he cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more till 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while.